Hello everyone, today we'll explain the Upper Moon Demon 1 KokuShibo's backstory. We'll talk about his previous life as a human, and also his role as the Upper Demon Moon 1. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video so we can make more videos about this in the future. Now without any more delays, let's start the video. 500 years ago, KokuShibo was born during the turbulent Sengoku era, or Warring State period, of medieval Japan to a family of samurai as Michigatsu Tsugekuni. During this time, feudal military barons with private armies constantly fought another for supremacy, plunging all of Japan into a long, bloody civil war. Alliances were forged, only to be broken. People dead or dying in large numbers with their corpses littering the land, and the threat of power-hungry subordinates usurping their superiors was prevalent. Born into such an environment, Michikatsu had to constantly keep his guard up and to understand his own position to survive. This habit persisted even after becoming a demon, and because of this upbringing, Michikatsu, or KokuShibo, doesn't tolerate lowers attempting to defy uppers. Hence, him punishing Akaza the Upper Moon 3 for turning upon Doma, who is Upper Moon 2. Michikatsu was the elder twin brother of Yoriichi Tsugekuni, the first user of the Breath of the Sun. The twin brothers were amongst the very first group of breath style users, with Michikatsu being the user of the Breath of the Moon. At a young age, Michikatsu always looked after his younger twin brother, Yoriichi, and gave him a flute as a gift. Michikatsu sympathized that Yoriichi's life was difficult and how he suffered discriminatory treatment from their own father. Then there came a day Michikatsu's view of Yoriichi would shatter beyond repair. During a typical kendo lesson, Yoriichi came up and held a wooden sword duel against the instructor, who Michikatsu couldn't defeat no matter how hard he tried and with what tricks he tried to pull. Yoriichi, who up until this point never held a sword in his life, defeated the kendo instructor decidedly and unilaterally, much to Michikatsu's shock. Still struggling to piece together what he just saw, Michikatsu asked how Yoriichi managed to win, and Yoriichi told him what techniques he used: unique breathing that enhanced his physical attributes, and another technique that allowed Yoriichi to move faster and see through his opponent's anatomy, which would later become known as See-Through World. But Yoriichi was not pleased with the violence that kendo made him use, and he quickly lost further interest in swordsmanship. But Michikatsu was concerned. Yoriichi was revealed to be a strong, admirable, and prodigious swordsman who would no doubt threaten Michikatsu's position as a successor to the clan. Then, one day, Yoriichi came to inform Michikatsu that their mother died of illness, and Yoriichi himself would enter the monastery, never to return. After Yoriichi left his house, Michikatsu read a diary left by his late mother and realized many uncomfortable truths about his brother, who was not at all what he seemed to be. Realizing the truths about Yoriichi, Michikatsu's brotherly feelings towards Yoriichi developed into full-blown jealousy, and rivalry between the brothers fostered. After Yoriichi left, Michikatsu inherited the position of the clan lord and became the samurai he wanted to be. Time went on, and Michikatsu gradually began to forget Yoriichi, living a peaceful life, getting married, and fathering a son. Michikatsu and his men were attacked by a demon. Only Michikatsu was saved, by Yoriichi. Seeing his brother matured into an even better samurai than he ever could be, Michikatsu's jealousy rekindled. Michikatsu left his family in order to pursue his brothers back. However, things were not going well from Michikatsu's point of view. Every time he tried so hard, and finally seemed to inch closer to Yoriichi in terms of power, there came an ever greater gap in skill, further frustrating the older brother. Still, with patience, Michikatsu trained hard. Eventually, Michikatsu developed his own Demon Slayer mark, and also developed the Breath of the Moon based upon the Breath of the Sun, reaching towards his brother's peak of power. Just as Michikatsu believed that he too will ultimately reach Yoriichi's talent in due time, his life made a drastic turn. He discovered that those who developed the Demon Slayer mark greatly shortened their lifespan and made them live until they were only 25 years old at a maximum. When he received the news that Slayer mark wielders died at a young age, Michikatsu became disillusioned, and he too believed that he would die one day after his 25th birthday, with no one to inherit his skills, and that he would never be able to surpass Yoriichi. Under the fear of his own death, Michikatsu made a pact with Muzan Kibutsuji, who approached him. Muzan, in addition to having an interest of converting demon slayers into demons, explained to Michikatsu that by becoming a demon, Michikatsu would avoid death by his demon slayer mark and be able to maintain, train, enhance, and hone his breathing swordsmanship skills for eternity. Michikatsu accepted the offer for eternal life and power and became a demon in the process. Not long after becoming a demon, Michikatsu, now christened as KokuShibo, betrayed the Demon Slayer Corps and assassinated the Corps' commander by decapitating him. This act of betrayal led to his brother Yoriichi being severely denounced and reprimanded by his fellow demon hunters, nearly being forced to commit seppuku as restitution. Fortunately, Yoriichi was spared by the younger son of the deceased Corps' commander and only dismissed from the Demon Slayer Corps. For the next 60 years, Michikatsu came to discover that his brother also awakened the same kind of mark, but became the only exception at the time to awaken his own power. Presumably under Muzan's order, he hunted down his brother for 6 decades, and discovered that while Yoriichi had developed the mark as well, he managed to live past 25. When KokuShibo found him, Yoriichi was already an old man in his 80s. Surprised that his brother managed to live a long age even with the mark, KokuShibo believed that he had never met his brother for 60 years. He kept questioning why Yoriichi was still alive. However, Yoriichi tearfully replied that his brother's choice was such a pity. KokuShibo saw his brother's tears and was deeply guilt-ridden about his jealousy and choice. However, knowing the destiny of the brothers destined to slay each other, KokuShibo was still determined to kill Yoriichi, knowing that he was too senile to live any longer. While holding pity towards his brother, Yoriichi proceeded to fight him before landing a slash on KokuShibo's shoulder. KokuShibo felt seriously repressed by an unseen force and was awestruck by fear. Shocked, KokuShibo realized that his brother's strength never faded in spite of his age and frail state. Getting jealous, KokuShibo decided to finish off his brother and their 60-year-old feud with spite. Feeling that the next slash would be a fatal attack, KokuShibo turned around and prepared to land his attack before Yoriichi could behead him. Realizing that Yoriichi was the very same warrior that was so strong that even he cornered Muzan once himself when he was younger. However, once he turned around, KokuShibo discovered that Yoriichi stood still before the latter let his katana and head down. Immediately, KokuShibo came to the conclusion that Yoriichi was dead, much to his own grief. However, that grief soon turned into disgust, as he thought his human brother left this world with the win, so KokuShibo cut Yoriichi's corpse into pieces in order to spite him. In the process, the flute he gave to his younger brother was cut into pieces. Corrupting Kaigaku. Many years before the story started, KokuShibo had a confrontation with Kaigaku, one of the youngest demon slayers at the time, who was overpowered and defeated. Impressed by KokuShibo's strength, Kaigaku cowardly surrendered himself to KokuShibo. Seeing Kaigaku begging for mercy and his service, KokuShibo then offered his own blood and the power given by Muzan. He claimed that Kaigaku would become his companion if he accepted the blood, and then if Muzan is willing to accept him as an ally. But then he threatened Kaigaku that if a drop of blood was spilled, he would be chopped into pieces. With great care, Kaigaku accepted Muzan's blood from KokuShibo and became a demon, trying to fulfill his desire to become stronger. After Kaigaku became a demon, his master committed suicide out of sheer guilt and shame. Red Lights District Arc. KokuShibo made his debut in the Upper Moons' meeting after the deaths of both Gyutaro and Daki, the duo of Upper Moon 6. He was berated by Muzan for his and the other Upper Demon Moons' constant failure and calmly accepting it. During the meeting, KokuShibo watched as Doma sarcastically insulted Akaza, infuriating the latter so much that he sliced his head in half. As a punishment to Akaza's disrespectful behavior, an irritated KokuShibo covertly sliced off the former's hand due to his violation of the hierarchy of the Upper Moon system, claiming that Akaza had gone too far in enforcing the system. He then suggested that if Akaza was really disgusted by Doma, he should fight him in a bloody battle to take his place. Akaza agreed and challenged both Doma and KokuShibo, something the latter wished him luck before departing. Dimensional Infinite Fortress Arc. KokuShibo vs. Mushiro. During the Infinite Fortress arc, the Upper Moons went into a fiery final battle against the Slayers after Muzan attacked the base of the Demon Slayers and teleported almost the entire team into his lair, the Dimensional Infinity Fortress. During the battles, KokuShibo was seen alone in his room when he heard about Akaza's defeat at Tanjiro's hands and his subsequent suicide. KokuShibo lamented about how pitiful and weak Akaza was to have abandoned his ambition to become stronger, indicating that KokuShibo actually took Akaza's declaration of challenge seriously and was even looking forward to their duel that never came. As KokuShibo waited for his opponent, he soon gained his wish and encountered Muichiro Tokido, the Mist Pillar, who was transported to the same room as KokuShibo. With his deduction skills, KokuShibo realized that Muichiro was his descendant, born from a bloodline that was carried on by Kokushibo's child when he was still human, although his original family name no longer existed. Surprised that the Upper Moon One was his ancestor, Muichiro became determined to defeat him, then marched on for the fight, revealing his Demon Slayer mark that was activated in his confrontation against Gyoko. Seeing Muichiro having such strong skills at a mere age of 14, KokuShibo was impressed and proud of him. He praised Muichiro for being such a young warrior, believing that it must be the product of his own family's bloodline. Nevertheless, Muichiro denied KokuShibo's theory. They began to fight against each other, but KokuShibo quickly overpowered his descendants and cut off one of his arms. Nevertheless, Muichiro quickly tightened his arm to stop the bleeding, before continuing to fight. Seeing this, KokuShibo became even more impressed, and decided to spare him by pinning Muichiro against a column effortlessly. He then offered a chance to Muichiro to serve Muzan as a demon so he could continue to live. Fighting Shinazugawa brothers. However, their discussion was interrupted by Genya Shinazugawa when the latter started shooting his Nichirin gun at the Upper Moon One. KokuShibo easily avoided the gunshot. He then appeared behind Genya and began to dismember him, while recognizing Genya to be the one who ate demons. Then, seeing Genya still alive, KokuShibo realized that Genya was unlike any other imitation demon 300 years ago, so he decided to behead him. Fortunately, before KokuShibo could proceed, Genya was rescued by his brother, Sanemi Shinazugawa, the Wind Pillar, who accepted Genya's apologies and came to understand his younger brother, and vice versa. The Shinazugawa brothers finally reconciled with each other after their years of feud. Watching the entire scene, KokuShibo had a nostalgic feeling of him fighting alongside his late brother, Yoriichi, before he snapped out of his sad feelings and began to duel Sanemi. Very briefly during the fight, KokuShibo was slightly stalled by the skill of Sanemi. However, he still retained his composure and fought with the experience of fighting a past Wind Pillar, dealing a serious wound to Sanemi and stating that moving would lead to his entrails being spilled out. However, Sanemi was unfazed. Laughing fearlessly, Sanemi proceeded to use his rare blood to lure the demon, in the very same way that he once tried to test Nezuko and prove her threat, but failed since Nezuko recalled her human past and refused to attack him. Unlike Nezuko, who managed to resist, KokuShibo was briefly mesmerized by Sanemi's rare blood, but then refused to buy it. He regained his composure and overpowered Sanemi with his moon-breathing 6th form. He then decided to deal a significant blow to Sanemi, but his attack was interrupted by Gyome Himejima, the Stone Pillar, who came to the rescue. Now surrounded by 3 opponents, KokuShibo struggled to retain himself and observed Gyome's skills. He was impressed by the physical skill and build of Gyome, stating that he had not fought an immensely strong and powerful swordsman like Gyome for 300 years. Getting serious. Following an intense struggle, Gyome awakened his demon-slaying mark on himself to fight KokuShibo, though stating once it was his trump card he meant to save for Muzan, much to KokuShibo's concern. Because Gyome was already 27 years old, his current state shortened his lifespan into just 1 night, and he'd be dead by dawn. Feeling pity that such a talented person could not live through the end of the night, KokuShibo then proposed to save Gyome's life by turning him into a demon. But Gyome rejected the offer and claimed that KokuShibo's offering was an insult to humanity, before stating that there was once a certain swordsman who managed to live past his 25th birthday, even with his mark awakened, possibly referring to Yoriichi, which made KokuShibo emotionally disturbed for a bit. Realizing that Gyome would never join him, KokuShibo cynically scorned his faith in humanity and engaged in battle once more. Meanwhile, Sanemi managed to seize the chance and stitch his wounds, before rejoining the fray and attacking KokuShibo. Deciding to go serious, KokuShibo evolved his own katana, and it turned into what appeared to be an elongated sword with 3 extending blades. He managed to overpower Sanemi and continue to battle his opponents. The fight became so intense that KokuShibo had part of his hair severed and his blade broken, but they always regenerated. Seizing the chance, Muichiro managed to free himself from the column and helped Genya by reattaching his body and feeding him a piece of KokuShibo's hair. Since KokuShibo's power was only behind Muzan, even his hair served the same effect as his blood, which contained some of the Upper Moon One's blood. Absorbing the power of KokuShibo, Genya then started to mutate and began to synchronize with the mind of KokuShibo, before hearing Muzan's voice inside his head. Turning the tables. On the battlefield, Gyome and Sanemi stalled KokuShibo back as Muichiro rejoined the fight. KokuShibo was busy fighting 3 pillars, without noticing that Genya swallowed a piece of his shattered blade and mutated even further. Then, KokuShibo discovered that Gyome managed to predict his actions and probably see through his weaknesses, even though he was blind. KokuShibo came to the conclusion that Gyome also possessed the ability of see-through world. As a result, he used the 16th style of the Breath of the Moon against the pillars. Muichiro managed to get close to KokuShibo and cut off the demonic swordsman's right arm at the cost of a leg. Struggling against KokuShibo, Muichiro shouted at Gyome to take action immediately. KokuShibo then discovered that Genya, now barely human in appearance, aimed the now mutated Nichiren gun at him. Heeding Muichiro's encouragement, Gyome fired bullets at KokuShibo, who tried to deflect it with his katana. However, the bullets changed their track, narrowly missing Muichiro and hitting KokuShibo's arm, much to his dismay. Shocked, KokuShibo then laid his eyes on Gyome and discovered that his gun was covered in demon eyes, just like the own katana of KokuShibo, making him realize that Gyome absorbed his own power. Before KokuShibo could react, Gyome used the blood demon art he gained from his mutation to turn the bullets into branches, trapping KokuShibo in a tree. Seizing the chance, the 3 pillars immediately leapt ahead and prepared to give him one last strike. Now being fully struck by horror and getting paralyzed by the nervous feeling, KokuShibo recalled his last confrontation with his brother 400 years ago, knowing that he was the very first man who drove him into such fear, as he faced the imminent danger right in front of him. Last stand and death. Enraged as his deceased brother was once again about to be proven right, KokuShibo was now more than ever determined to survive and sprouted blades all over his body, cutting Muichiro and Genya in half, respectively at the waist and spine, before fatally injuring Sanemi and Gyome. However, it didn't stop their attack. Being cut up horizontally, Muichiro held his blade, which turned red, similar to the phenomena when the Breath of the Sun was activated, and seared through KokuShibo's organs. The remaining slayers began landing blows on him as well, ending with Gyome and Sanemi beheading him. However, much to their horror, KokuShibo's head regenerated and turned into a much more monstrous form. At first, KokuShibo began to celebrate about himself conquering death, but then he began to feel only disgust when he saw his own reflection on Sanemi's blade. KokuShibo remembered his original goal and began to feel remorseful about discarding his humanity. He ceased the attack due to being distracted by his own thoughts, indirectly allowing Gyome to give one final blow on his head. KokuShibo attempted to regenerate once more, but due to Muichiro's blade, his blood demon art failed. He failed to regenerate the second time and began to crumble. As his shattered head was fading away, KokuShibo bitterly claimed that all he wanted was to be like his own brother, Yoriichi. He began his reminiscence over his past, his childhood, his marriage, his fall from grace, and eventually his murder of Yoriichi. Lost in confusion over the meaning of his existence, KokuShibo broke down in sadness while asking Yoriichi about it in vain, before completely perishing for good. The only thing that remained was his possession of some sliced-up pieces of flute, the same flute he made for Yoriichi when they were children, and the same one he once chopped into pieces indirectly when he mutilated his brother's corpse. KokuShibo's death announced the total extermination of the original Upper Moons. After KokuShibo's death, Genya and Muichiro passed away due to their injuries. Stricken by grief, Sanemi and Gyome vowed to destroy Muzan once and for all. KokuShibo is last seen being burned in hell all alone, condemned to be immolated by hellfire for eternity, without ever being reunited with any of his loved ones. Unlike his fellow demon Akaza and lesser demon Rui, both of whom regained their humanity and returned to their human forms, KokuShibo seems to remain as a demon. This meant that his brother could not reunite with KokuShibo, a tragic denouncement for both siblings who began their lives in tragedy and ended their lives in tragedy. His damnation in hell was a terrible end for a man who willingly severed all ties of love with his family, along with his own humanity. He lived alone, died alone, and now must suffer horribly for his crimes forever alone. If you're interested in more Demon Slayer videos, check out our channel.